And welcome back to the Shadow Gallery. I'm your host, James Donnelly, as always. And, it's new comics, bitches! God, I'm still working on that. Whether that ends up working or not, just let me know. People who subscribe to me, let me know. Because I'm just not sure about it. Anyway, some really interesting and good stuff this week. Some not so great stuff, and yeah. So let's get right to it. So the first thing that I'm going to review for this week is Fear Itself, Sins Past, the one-shot relating to Fear Itself. I do not have this because I borrowed it, and I borrowed it because when I heard that it was mostly reprints of issues of Captain America dealing with the character of Sin, I decided, well, you know what, I'm not going to fork over $4.99 for comic books that I probably already own. And maybe like 10 pages of filler story. So this, basically the actual story itself harkens back to the actual original story. Harkens back to just recently when Sin basically sabotaged the living hell out of Bucky's trial. And she, basically blew a hole in the Statue of Liberty's face. And Steve Rogers is just kind of there on site at the statue, kind of lamenting about what's happened and everything like that. And it's, overall kind of a dull story as far as the original the original text is concerned of what they wrote for this issue. But obviously, it's very apparent that this is all this is all an important tie-in to Fear Itself. Now, Fear Itself, Homefront, which was released recently, that was a much stronger effort to at least give an idea, an original idea of what's actually going on peripherally to the main Fear Itself story. So to me, that's a good thing. And I like that comic. But this Fear Itself, Sins Past, like I said, it's this 10 maybe 10 pages of actual new stuff with 3 reprints of Captain America comics that I actually own. From back in the late 80s, which was about when I actually started collecting Captain America back then. It's like, in the 300s or something like that. And it's basically Cap who uses the magic of one of the Eternals, Cersei, to basically devolve into a 15-year-old skinny little kid to look for some runaways, and ends up falling in with Mother Night and the Sisters of Sin, who are basically they're there to help subvert the youth of the United States, and one runaway at a time apparently, and then, it also introduced, well, I don't know if it introduced Sin, but she was one of the Sisters of Sin. And, she was, kind of a loon, but not a total, unadulterated fucking psycho like we see her now. I don't even know if she really even knew that, her father was the Red Skull at that point in time. But just that she was doing, just basically, subversion work, and, with a lot of brutality and a a lot of obviously comics. The Cap comics were a lot kind of lighter then because eventually he the spell that's the magic that he has kind of wears off, and he ends up fighting all of the Sisters of Sin, and they round most of them up, and so on and so forth, and the day is saved, and yay. But then, of course, we have years later with Brubaker, taking over, and Sin becomes more of a major player, and now that she's had, basically most of the skin off her face blown off, now she really actually does resemble her father, and is more than willing to take up his cause now that he seems to be dead. Well, not his cause for a new, like a Fourth Reich or whatever the hell he's planned for, but just basically really screwing up the world and just making it as as horrible as she sees it. So Fear Itself, Sin's Past, boring. And just the reprints of those particular comics were just kind of silly, because it's so outdated and so it just doesn't hold up well at all. Much love and respect to the late Mark Gruenwald, who wrote those issues, and they were good at the time. I mean, they were pretty powerful stuff, but right now it just doesn't work so well. Anyway, so not good. Fear Itself. Good was Green Hornet number 15, which is basically the big GH, Britt Reed Jr. basically, as you can see from this, from this cover, obviously reflecting the famous issue of Spider-Man, where basically Spider-Man, Spider-Man no more. He throws his costume in a garbage can and just walks away from it. You see the silhouette and everything like that, and it's a very famous cover. But that's basically the idea here, is that because they're dealing with the injuries of Mulan Kato, and what happened to her, and now while fighting off a sex trafficker, he seems to have accidentally killed one of not quite so innocent but not quite so evil people that he was fighting, by using his the sleep gas, the green sleep gas that he uses. So then he decides he's going to throw it all away and stop being the Green Hornet, because if he kills somebody, and then Clutch is there to basically say well, snap out of it, dude. Somebody's bound to die sometime. As long as you keep fighting the good fight, and as long as you as long as you understand that killing is not necessary but is kind of an inevitability in this kind of combat, when you're fighting the forces of evil, then shit's gonna happen, and you got to be prepared for it. And so he picks it back up, and then of course discovers that the man he thought he killed is actually still alive, is actually aiming to put a real serious hurt on the House of Kato, and also on Britt Reed here. So we've got some really interesting things coming up for the story. Again, Phil Hester, Jonathan Lau, a great writer-artist team. I really like what they're doing with Green Hornet. It's very exciting. The art, as always, is good comic book art without being like too hyper, like Rob Liefeld weird. So that's good stuff. So we're gonna be back in just a few moments with more new comics. Biatch!